Hi guys, welcome to the video and welcome to this beastie here. This is the Pimax Crystal Lite headset, VR headset, and I bought this on a well-known auction site, used. And this is going to be the subject for today's video, and as per the title, it's going to be a look at not necessarily the headset in detail, but my experience of buying it, what I got, and my thoughts after the event. So stick around to the end where I come up with a sort of conclusion and what happened and where we're at. Before we go any further, I'm going to ask a huge favour of everyone. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to tick like, share, subscribe, etc. However, I'm looking at pushing for 15,000 subscribers. So it doesn't cost you anything, financial, time-wise, etc. It doesn't cost anything. But I would appreciate if you're able to do so, subscribing to the channel. And of course the advantage is that any future content, you're made aware of it. You can always ignore it, it's not really an issue, but as I say, if you do enjoy the video, please a subscribe would be appreciated. Now, in terms of why would I buy a used Pimax VR headset? Simple, it's cheaper. As I say, the price of one of these, the retail price of these is, including postage, packing, all that sort of stuff, it's in excess of £850 sterling. I think it's probably going to be closer to 900, whereas what I paid was £470. Now, there's pros and cons with this, which we will discuss, and I think in fairness, at this point, a bit of a spoiler alert, I think the cons outweigh the pros. Or should I say, rather than the cons, the risks outweigh the pros in a lot of circumstances. And I think I was fortunate that I had a lot of luck with this. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at the headset. We'll have a look at the headset physically for its condition, etc. We will have a look at its performance in terms of in the PC, whether it's got any issues in terms of dead pixels, etc. And then at the end of it, we'll have a bit of a discussion and we'll see what we think. Now, buying used goods online always has a certain amount of risk. If you buy it from a shop, you get the chance to inspect it beforehand. If you buy it overline direct from the retailer, which is always the best option, you obviously get a certain amount of support and cover. So having bought this from an online website, as I say, an online auction website, a very well-known one, I have no insurance for it, I have no warranty, I have no guarantee. These things can be quite delicate, so if it breaks, I've got no real comeback. My only option would be to try and contact Pimax and see if they can help out with a repair. Now, the most likely problem to have with something like this would be damaging the lenses. So scratching the lenses or causing abrasions, which then affects the vision. And damaging the lenses with one of these basically renders the whole thing useless. And so that's one of the things that you need to be very certain about with buying any second-hand goods, is to basically make sure the condition is what you're expecting. And obviously, a lot of the time you can't do that until you're using the device. So with the best will in the world, just looking at pictures on a website doesn't really give you an indication. And obviously with a 3D headset, it's very difficult to replicate that 3D sense. You know, there could be a lack of alignment, it could be out of alignment, so it doesn't appear to be any issues until you put it on and wear it. And then, you know, the question is, where is your comeback after that? So the risks of buying something that's a very high-tech object online with no guarantee and no insurance is pretty limited. It's not the greatest way of going about it. Now, obviously, I would have bought a brand new one from Pimax if I had the money. The reason I have a used one is not because I am excessively money conscious, it's just because I don't have enough for a new one. If I did have the money for a new one, I would have bought a new one. So as I say, what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at what we've got in terms of what arrived on the doorstep, and then we will have it in the air, take it for a flight, see what we think. Now, one of the things I'll mention at this point is I'm not sure about the compatibility with X-Plane 12. I was going to try and demonstrate it in X-Plane 12. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it working, and there's a bit of a discussion online about if it will or won't work, and I didn't have the time to get through it before this video, to be honest. So we're going to have a look at it in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 after Sim Update 3, and also X-Plane, and we'll have a look at both of those sims. So I'll see you in a moment. So here we have it, the Pimax Crystal Lite. Now, I'm always going to advise caution if buying from eBay. There's an awful lot that can go wrong. There's an awful lot that can go right, but you know, you often don't realise these things till after you've spent the money, and then you end up potentially in a dispute which needs resolution through eBay. So I'd say always be very careful. I'd also say always go through the eBay seller setup. One of the units I looked at, the seller wanted to do it as a cash transaction, so I would have had no comeback through eBay in terms of support for any issues. It would have been just a case of, well, you didn't go through our seller protection system and therefore you get nothing. So as I say, this is what I bought off eBay. Now, the other thing you're going to see is that what you get off eBay is not necessarily exactly what you would have been sold if you were buying the unit new. An important distinction to be made there. So obviously I've got the headset. I'll put that to one side for the moment. Let's make sure it's safe over there. And as an example, this is the box I received. I believe there was a sleeve or some sort of outer box for this. The reason being is I can lift up this flap at the front. There's nothing that stops it from closing that I can see. So this is obviously the original box because it's got Pimax, but there must have been some outer box or outer sleeve that's not present with this. So that's the first thing, is what you get from eBay may not necessarily be what you were anticipating, but they've done a picture of this box. It looked like it was the outer box. I would suggest now it's probably not. However, lifting it up, the other element of eBay is you don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to get in the box. You may get all the original bits, you may get some of the original bits and bits missing, but you don't have an itemised list, so you don't necessarily know what you're missing and if, you know, what was standard with the kit. So that's the second thing. The third thing is sometimes you will get, as this previous owner has done, you will get some freebies in. So these are the comfort fittings that you can buy, third-party comfort fittings that you can buy, things like the weights that go on the back so that it doesn't constantly tilt forward. And I do wonder why we end up with a complete industry for things like putting counterbalance weights on the back of a helmet, headset, sorry. It should be patently obvious that if they're having to do that, the original one wasn't balanced well enough. But I'm happy because I got those bits free, and I don't know how much they are. They're probably going to be a fair packet. Now, I did get the original owner's manual. However, obviously these days a lot of stuff ends up online, so I don't think that's even been opened. And I did also get this bag of connectors for different connectors. The cable obviously would have been in this right compartment, and then the headset would have been under here. It's well padded, well packaged, but it's largely irrelevant because obviously I bought it through eBay. So it is what it is. Quite often companies won't necessarily, quite often sellers won't necessarily show you the inside of the packaging to demonstrate what you're getting. But as I say, there we go, that's a box. Let's pop all that back in. It's nice to see that it was good enough to keep it safe in transit, and the previous owner, when they packaged it up, they did do a nice job of it. So it's always worth looking at the previous owner's profile. Right, let's get rid of that. Consider that got rid of, and let's get the headset back over. So, obviously, I don't own another Pimax, so I have nothing to compare this to. All I can go on is the condition and what I see as the bits that I found to be good and the bits that I found to be bad in terms of the externals. Later on I'll pop a video on, although the difficulty is that you can't really see in 2D what it's like to have a 3D headset on. So it's kind of a moot point really. It's kind of pointless because unless you're watching a 3D image using a 3D headset, you can't see what I can see, but I can describe it. Right, first thing I'm going to point out is the two previous headsets I've had, the Rift S and the HP Reverb. Same sort of thing, you know, they have these sorts of cables. There's a display and a USB 2.0 I think it is, or 3.0. not entirely sure, blue one. Obviously one's for your monitor, one's for your sort of power slash data. I'm not quite sure what the two are. But further down, and I haven't got the adapter here, but you'll notice there's also like almost an audio pin down there, and that goes to a power supply, a small power supply adapter. So in effect, you've got 3 wires going into the system. You've got a display one, you've got a data one, and you've also got a power one. So it's obviously a bit of a power hungry beast. Having said that, it all wires up relatively easily. It's not particularly difficult, and there's plenty of bits on the YouTube of this world to identify how to do it. The unit itself is quite weighty. You can understand, let me get this around here, you can understand why it's got these counterweights as available by companies as a third-party choice. You can see them there, and they do make a difference. Obviously, you then get into all sorts of elements in terms of, has the previous owner looked after it? You can generally tell things like that by having a look at things like the faceplate of the, let me get that dirt off there. You can generally tell by having a, that's not coming off, but never mind, the condition of the front of these things, and underneath, if you get a chance to have a look at it, because that's what everybody puts it down on, and that's what everybody sees as where the wear and tear is. So yeah, this one's in pretty good condition. I saw others when I was looking at them which were in, shall I say, dubious condition, that immediately you were like, not gonna risk my money on that. And as I say, it is a risk. So we've had a look at one end of the cable. At the other end of the cable, it plugs in here. And the instructions don't have this bit, which the previous owner did, which I think is quite smart. They looped the cable around, if you can see that going around the bottom. So the cable comes in over the top. They've done it looping around and then into the headset. The advantage is obviously that it's not going to yank it from the headset. I've not pulled it out. The previous owner left it in situ. Seems to work fine. Likewise, they've obviously put various extra padding, etc. in here. You can just about see the lenses through there. They've taken the head strap off, which was a bit of a kerfuffle to figure out how to put it on. And then they've put the weights on the back. Again, a bit of a kerfuffle to sort those out. But yeah, what I'll say is the HP Reverb and the Rift S were both more comfortable than this headset. I did wonder what happened with the audio. There's obviously no microphone with this thing, but it does have rather feeble sound coming out of these. You can get sort of enhanced earpieces for it. I'm not sure whether I'm going to go for like a inner ear set of earpieces or something like that. But the sound in this is nowhere near as good as the HP Reverb, and it's also not as good as the Rift S, which is a much cheaper headset. So overall, the build quality seems to be pretty good. As I say, I don't know anything about how reliable this is going to be because it's an eBay purchase. I don't know if the previous owner did have any issues. One of the things I did make sure is I asked lots of questions about the lenses, make sure there's no scratches, etc. I took my old set to my old HP Reverb to a main, should we say, a high street used electronics company. A lot of people in the UK will know who they are. And they found what they described as a tiny possible manufacturing defect in one of the lenses. And at that point, they were not interested. So condition is everything if you're selling these things on, but condition is also everything if you're buying it. Which I can't stress enough. You have to ask lots and lots and lots of questions. You have to ask about the quality of the lenses, whether it's had any replacement lenses, whether it's got any scratches, anything like that, any dings, whether it's had any alterations to the power cable, whether it comes with all the power packs that's needed, etc. You literally have to ask every question, not because necessarily you're going to hand the unit back or send the unit back. But the thing is that if you ask all the questions, the eBay buyer protection can sort you out much better than if you then have a squabble of you going, oh, well, it's got a scratch lens, and the previous owner goes, well, I didn't see any scratch lens. The overall build quality of the unit seems good. I've had no issues with it. This ratchet for tightening it up seems a bit flimsy. It doesn't seem, it's not nowhere near as comfortable as the HP Reverb. these sections here sit very far out from the side of your head, so you kind of end up with a gap here, and here the fixing the sort of headset as the back here and the front across your face, which I used to ride motorbikes a lot. Full face helmets, they're snug. I don't think you'd necessarily want them in terms of using VR, because the heat would be intense. But what I'm getting to is the fact that they're snug, so they have points around all over the place where it feels secure to your head. I suspect if you didn't have weights on the back of this thing, it wouldn't feel as secure. But anyway, let's have a look at it on the PC and have a look at the performance. So here we are in our VR world in the Chinook, which is a fantastic helicopter, and we're just going to have a look at what we've bought, what we've paid for. First thing I'm going to notice is that the attention to detail in the aircraft is fantastic, so it's great for this in terms of seeing what clarity I've got. I've got really good clarity, so the software, the headset's obviously working together very well, which is the first thing. Second thing, obviously, in terms of detail, I can see lots of detail. Again, the sweet spot's very nice in the centre. It's like most VR headsets, you still look like you still, if you concentrate on it, you feel like you're looking down a couple of toilet roll tubes. With the black far out to the left, although because I'm visually impaired the right doesn't affect me. Looking down, as I say, you can see all of the necessary detail in terms of text and information that you would want if flying. I remember having the Rift S, where it was nothing like this. It was nothing of this quality at all, just to adjust my headset a little bit. And so yeah, it's really good. The only thing I've noticed is that my microphone doesn't seem to work. It comes up on Windows as having a microphone, but it doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to pick up at all with the headset. That may be a software issue, it might be a headset issue, I do not know. If anyone knows of any issues or how to set up the microphone for a Pimax, as I say, I haven't got the additional earpieces. Let's get this thing airborne and see how we get on. As I say, one of the advantages of VR is both depth perception and movement. And we're at Red Hill, by the way, in Surrey. The reason I chose this place, a couple of reasons. First of all, it's by Burn and Glue Designs, who do some amazing VFR airfields for the UK, and this is one of theirs, which is fantastic. The other thing is that this used to be the training base / headquarters for Bristow's International in the UK, I believe. I went for applied for a sponsorship with them and unfortunately didn't get it. But anyway, back to the case in point. The visuals, I've got nice fine detail. I don't know how to get rid of the menu yet, because I've not really flown VR in 2024 that much. Although I absolutely hate the strange lighting effect that you get in 2024. But looking around, I've not got much lag. There's a little bit, and there's a very little bit of stutter. As I say, I'm using a 4080 NVIDIA RTX 4080, and I've got an Intel i7 13700K processor, and they seem to cope with the Pimax fine. As I say, you can probably get better performance out of higher performance or higher spec processors and or high spec graphics cards, but this is what I've got. I'm perfectly happy with it, and it seems to handle the Pimax perfectly well. As I say, you've basically got two 4K monitors strapped to your head. In terms of, as I say, the detail's great. It doesn't seem to have any issues. The range of motion, it doesn't have any blurriness. There's no obvious scratches to the lenses, and there's nothing where I'm sat there shouting at it going, you know, oh, what an awful purchase. So I've been very lucky in that respect, is what I would say. Let's come back down towards Red Hill again and see how we get on with trying to do some sort of landing. What are we at? We're at just coming past 100 knots. Very high. Now, I've not flown helicopters in the Sims very much at all. I've certainly not flown them in real life very much. I have got a few hours in helicopters, but nothing really to write home about in real world. Flown S300, R22s. Most people have flown an R22, and then playing around with a squirrel and having a little bit of stick time in a Sea King, although I wouldn't profess to have any great skill at these things. Just need to keep ourselves moving, trying to keep the landing position in the same spot in the windshield, and trying to avoid VRS. I will try and bring ourselves down to some sort of hover. And again, depth perception in VR is one of the really useful points of VR. And the ability to look around very quickly. I'm conscious that you get that with we're just a little bit short of our landing spot, but that's fine. I'm conscious, yes, you do get that ability to look around in 2D headsets, so eye tracking and all that sort of thing. But 3D gives a really good depth perception. It also, if you're not careful, gives you really good motion sickness, and that's one of the catches, I would say. But in terms of flying around and operating a helicopter or low-level flight VFR, that sort of thing, really advantageous. Let's try and bring ourselves down somewhere here, and then we'll move on to DCS. Trying not to, we're not quite on the centre of the runway, but I don't really want to drift too far sideways, otherwise we'll roll over. There we go, back wheels, front wheels, and we're down. So let's have a quick look in DCS. Right, so here we are in the Gazelle. We'll just have a quick look around. We'll see if we can fly this thing, and then we'll talk about the headset. Sensitive is an understatement with regards to the controls on this thing. And let's get out of here. More right pedal needed. I'm trying to avoid that tower. Try and get out of the billowing sandstorm that we've got in front of us. This is a kind of a race scenario, so we're probably going to get shouted at a moment for not doing it. Right, again, the clarity really good in terms of reading stuff. There we go. Yeah, we've lost. We're not doing what we should be doing, but we're going to have a fly around and see what it's like in terms of the VR in DCS. Very nice, to be fair. This used to be one of my favourite aircraft in DCS, but I'm so out of practice with it, and the controls on it are so challenging to use. So challenging to use because it's so sensitive. Oh look, it comes all the way over here, look. You'll be wanting, this is a very agile helicopter, and I've got a real soft spot for it because I did the initial low flying training that you do in the Navy on Gazelles, and then you move to do low flying in jet stream aircraft, which is yeah, that's a challenge, trying to do low flying out looking out of a letterbox. But back to the case in point, the visuals and the headset. Again, very nice sweet spot in the middle, great clarity in terms of the digits and numbers. There's no obvious blurring, scratches, anything like that that's going to affect the lenses. The lens clarity is great, the trees are very close. Again, good depth perception with the headset for 3D VR. And overall, I have to say, I've been lucky, if I'm honest. I've been lucky because this could have been an absolute nightmare of a headset. Now the only thing, as I say, where I seem to have an issue is in terms of sound. There doesn't seem to be a microphone on this headset. I don't know if it should have one or not. I know I haven't got the additional earpieces, so I'm only using the sort of default built-in ones, which aren't great, to be honest. Let's see, can we bring ourselves back around towards some sort of landing? Right, there's our landing pad. These controls are incredibly sensitive. Now, I've had a little bit of a stutter every now and again on this. Concentrating hard with this one, unlike the Chinook. I really got to be sensitive with the controls for this. Try and bring it into a high hover and then bring it down without crashing. Try and get the nose straight to the right. Ooh, VRS. Yeah. Oh, that's taken all the blades off. Yeah, back to the case in point, which is the clarity. The clarity of the instruments in DCS is really, really good, despite the vibration from the blades. Let's see if we can just take the turn the engine off, stop the blade vibration. But the text, for example, on the tablet and the image, absolutely outstanding. Looking around, it's got good head tracking. Can see above, below, left, right. So the head tracking appears to be good on it. There's no issues with that. The lens quality and clarity is good. There's no scrapes, scratches, etc. like that. So what I'll do is I'll just bin out of this and then we'll have a final talk, because I think I've ripped off most of one of my rotor blades there, haven't I? Oh, see you in a moment. So before I sum up, I'm just going to refresh myself with the website. Because obviously I looked at it previously when I was costing the risk benefit in terms of, do I go for a used headset or not, and there's a few things about it, so I thought I would refresh myself with the website, because this is obviously what I was comparing it to, in terms of, you know, what am I going to get as opposed to what's there. And reasonably speaking, the only thing I didn't get from my second-hand purchase was the controllers, which I wasn't expecting, and the cleaning wipes and a USB cable, which I've got no idea what it relates to. The box looks very similar to the box I've got, but I suspect, given how easy it is to open, there's probably going to be some sort of outer sleeve to it. But not too much difference from what I actually got, although I did get some of the face comforts thrown in by the seller. The thing to be aware of is that I paid £470 on an online site, and you know, that in theory you go, well, £200 for the controllers on top. That's not too bad, is it? Except two things: the way they've started doing the pricing, I'm not a particular fan of, but it's this thing where you have an upfront payment of £490 basically, and then you pay another £200 over 2 years, I think it is. Which for me, I don't particularly like that. I want to be a one-all, you know, I just want to pay it and get on with it, and not have to sit there waiting for this thing to tick over. But the other thing to be aware of, shipping and taxes calculated at checkout. So in the UK, tax is 20% on that. So you'd add an extra, what, £140 on top of that for your taxes. So that brings it up to 850 plus your shipping. So you're probably looking at £900, to be honest. So that brings me to, I've got a little list of what I'm going to go through here right at the very end. So in order to wrap up and come up with some sort of conclusion to the end of the video, we're just going to discuss a few things in terms of my thoughts, my experiences and my recommendations. The first thing really for me is in terms of the headset. It's a dead easy bit. It is an awesome headset. It is an absolutely awesome headset, and it's the best VR headset that I've tried in all the years of flight simming that I've been doing it. Admittedly, I haven't got a massive breadth of experience in VR, but this is clearly for me the best. However, the purpose of the video was to look at my experience in terms of buying online a used Pimax Crystal Lite, and I've got to say that I came out being very lucky. I'm being honest here. I was lucky because a lot of things could have gone wrong, and fortunately for me, didn't. It's a big significant warning in that respect. What were the pros? Well, the pros were the fact that I got a really good headset at a significantly reduced price. But really, that's the only pro. Maybe you could have another pro if it's a different headset, that you could be buying a headset that's no longer in production, so you'd be getting something that's no longer available to market. But for me, you know, the only way I could afford a Pimax Crystal Lite was to buy a used one, and that brings with it inherent risk. So we then get on to my experience. My experience was to go through a website, an online auction site, where I was going to get some sort of buyer protection. I'm always conscious in terms of not paying by means of things like bank transfers, etc. Not paying collection with cash on collection, because once that money's handed over, you've got no comeback. In the UK, you can pay with a credit card if it's over £100 for items, and then you get insurance through the credit card. Likewise, if you go through reputable sites like eBay, then you get buyer protection through that, and obviously they can help in things like resolving disputes. So my recommendation with regards to the cons is to go through a system where you've got some protections, and it's going to be limited, because if you buy a dud and you know you're buying a dud and you're on a wing and a prayer, you know, so be it. And it comes back to the age-old phrase of buyer beware. So my experience was a very positive one, I have to be honest. It was also a very nervous one. All it needed was for one of the lenses to be out of alignment, and I was stuffed. Scratch on a lens, you know, something overheating in the actual electronics and not being able to get a clear image, or having issues with always causing crashes on the desktop, for example. There are so many things that could go wrong with high tech these days, and a lot of the time it's not repairable. And obviously you then come to, if you need to get a repair, how much would it cost? Would Pimax honour it? You've got no warranty, obviously, because you bought it used, and so the risks are significant, and there's an argument to say that the risks outweigh the benefits, and I think they do. You know, I'll be honest, I came out very lucky. The couple of the headsets I looked at, I did sort of walk away from. I went, I'm just not feeling good about this one. I'm just not feeling good about this one. And that's one of my main suggestions, is if it looks too good to be true, drill down, ask questions, don't be too keen to part with any money. The other element is, if it looks in bad condition, don't be afraid of walking away. You know, there's always going to be another day, there's always going to be another sale, there's always going to be whatever. The biggest recommendation I can give is that if you can buy something new with the warranty, with the assurance that brings with it, then always do that. There's no point penny pinching, you know, and trying to do things on the cheap unless you have no alternative. And for me, that was the case. I was never going to be able to afford or justify spending £1,000 or just under £1,000 on a Pimax Crystal Lite. You know, for the amount of time I spend in VR, I couldn't justify it. Maybe now I'll be able to justify it because I'll use it more and more because of the quality of the product. But obviously, you need to be mindful of overall cost, packaging, quality, communications. Not all sellers are great with communications. Some are amazing. So it's really difficult to come up with a clear do this, don't do this. It's really down to the individual, and there is a risk-reward element to it in terms of how much you are willing to potentially lose your money. And that's a huge thing. You know, I'm not saying it's gambling. It is a considered decision. But fortunately for me, it worked out. And so I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. As I said at the start, it'd be great if you guys can help me to 15,000 subscribers. It costs nothing. It's just to click on a subscriber thing on the bell, and that would be hugely appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.